Which states are the most competitive politically? Today on Political Excess, we're going to go through and do a tier ranking of all 50 states and find out. Now, you could do this any number of ways. You could use the Cook PVI. You could go by what happened in the midterms. But I'm going to do it my own subjective way. I'm not going to just focus on what happened in the midterms last month. That's definitely going to be a factor. I'm going to generally look at the last decade and see which states, not just on a presidential level, but overall statewide, which are the most competitive. So we've got tiers A, B, C, D, and F. So let's get started and go through each state. So first up is Alabama. This is a red state. There's no doubt about that. So this is going to be near the bottom. They did have Doug Jones, U.S. Senator, not that long ago. That could be an argument to put this in D tier. So I wouldn't disagree if you did put it in D. I'm going to still put it in F. That was a very minor fluke and a blip on the radar. Alabama is a heavy red state. Now, how about Alaska? This is an interesting state. It's fairly red, but they do have a U.S. rep. That's a Democrat. So that's going to have to put it probably somewhere in the middle of the pack. It's never been an overwhelmingly red state, but it is a red state. But it is a tough call given 2 elections in a row with that special election. A Democrat won that House seat. Ranked choice voting, that might be a factor. I don't know. This is a tough call. It's either a D or a C. I will put it in a high D. Arizona. Well, Arizona is probably trending toward the left. Democrats seem to have had a lot of success there lately. Prior to the last maybe 3 or 4 years, Republicans were doing really well here. So if you even all that out, it's a borderline CB. I'll put it in a low B. I don't think Republicans feel good about Arizona at this point, but they're not out of it. If they lose, it's only going to be by a couple of points or so. Arkansas, that state is not competitive at all. That is going in F. California, that's going to go in F as well. Democrats just dominate that state. It's hard to really make a case otherwise. Colorado, that is a state that's generally pretty blue. Governor and for Senate, I know they had Cory Gardner. He won it in 2014. State legislator there. That definitely favors the Democrats. Colorado's going in D. It's not really all that competitive. Well, how about Connecticut? That's going in F. Republicans seem to really have nothing going on in Connecticut. Yeah, sometimes they do get close here and there, but not enough to get it out of F. Delaware, same thing. 20 years ago, this would definitely not be an F, but it's going in F right now, along with Washington, D.C., of course. Florida, now that's a state that's interesting. It's trended toward the right, but I can't just only focus on what happened in the midterms. It's still going to be reasonably competitive. I'm putting that in C. In the future, it's probably going to maybe drop down to D. But if it wasn't for that last midterm, it would be up in B, if not even in A, if you go back about 5 years or so. Georgia, this I'm going to put on the top tier. There's got to be something on the top, and it does feel like it's slipping away from the Republicans. But of course, Brian Kemp, he just had a nice win there in his re-election. For the other stuff, U.S. Senate, Democrats are narrowly winning those, so that's not going to feel good for the Republicans, but it does seem like it's definitely a competitive state, even if it is slipping away from the Republicans. Hawaii, that's F. Republicans aren't doing anything there. I don't see that changing anytime soon. Idaho, that's going to be an F also. Very uncompetitive state. Illinois, we know it is a blue state, but it's going to go in D. They did have a Republican governor they elected in 2014. It's a little while ago at this point. But as we see in the U.S. House results, Democrats won the popular vote there, but it wasn't overwhelming. So there's a lot of red vote there. It's just that given there is a majority of Democratic vote, and I think it does make Illinois look a little bit bluer than it is. How about Indiana? Well, Democrats aren't completely at a lost cause there. They did have Joe Donnelly as their U.S. Senator not that long ago. So they have a chance. It's definitely a red state, but not as red as some of these others. How about Iowa? That's an interesting state. Republicans seem to have a pretty good grip on it. In the U.S. House, that does give Democrats a chance to win even up to 3 of these districts. They had that not too long ago. But the state legislature is very Republican at this point. There is one Democrat in statewide office. That's the auditor there, Rob Sand. So it is kind of borderline CD at this point. Given the recent election, it's probably a high D. But before that, it was close. Kim Reynolds, her first election, she narrowly won it. So I will put it in a high D, but you could make a case that is a C. Kansas. How about Kansas? Well, they reelected Laura Kelly there, the Democrat, but other than that, it's generally a red state. I think it is trending toward the left, so maybe in a decade or so, this could actually be much more competitive. Democrats do have one of those congressional districts there, so you could make a case this is a C. I'm open to that. It's on par with Iowa. Presidentially, though, Iowa is definitely more toward the left, but I'm going to settle on a D for Kansas. Kentucky, that state is going to go in D. Outside of Andy Beshear, the governor, this is a very red state. Maine. Maine will go in C tier. 2 congressional districts. Republicans do have a good chance to pick up one of them. And for U.S. Senate, they have Susan Collins there, the moderate Republican. They have had Paul LePage as governor in the recent decade. It's definitely a blue-leaning state at the minimum, but I think it is more competitive than some of these other states. Louisiana, that's going to go in D. They do have the Democratic governor, John Bel Edwards. They elected him twice, but other than that, this is a very red state. Maryland, that's a tough call. Outside of Larry Hogan winning twice for governor over the last decade, this is a pretty blue state. Republicans have gotten screwed on that congressional map. I'll say this is a low D. This is borderline F, though, because of Larry Hogan. We'll put it in D. Massachusetts, similar to Maryland, they have Republican Governor Charlie Baker. They've elected him twice. But outside of that, this is one of the bluest states in the country. Michigan. I'm going to put Michigan in C tier. Seems like it's trended away from the Democrats over the last decade, but not enough for the Republicans to think they're going to be able to put it in their column. There's been some close elections there. Republicans have had a little bit of success. But we're going to see how the trends go over the next couple of cycles. But for now, I will put Michigan in C. Both parties do want to win Michigan in. I think both technically could, although it does slightly favor the Democrats. Minnesota. The congressional delegation is split, 4 Democrats, 4 Republicans. Statewide, Republicans seem to never be able to win anything over the last decade. It's going to go in D. Presidentially, of course, it would be an F. There is some Republican vote there. It's just not translating into a lot of electoral success. Mississippi, we'll put that in F. That is a pretty red state. Democrats don't have much going on there. Missouri, that will go in D. That used to be the quintessential swing state, but it's not purple anymore. It's a red state. Democrats have a small chance to do things there, but for the most part, Republicans dominate. Montana, interesting state. That's going to go in C. Presidentially, Republicans win it. In the U.S. Senate, they do have John Tester. They've had Democratic governors, so there's a decent amount of political balance in Montana, depending on how you look at it. As a state legislator, though, that's dominated by Republicans, but it's going in C tier. Nebraska, that will go in... It's going to be a low D. Republicans dominate, but not to an extreme level, I think, like some of these other states. So we will put it in D. Nevada, I'm going to put that in A. That has become one of the more competitive states. The statewide elections in the recent midterms were kind of a split. And in the popular vote for the House, Republicans actually won that, even though they only got 1 seat. So that's unfair, but there's a decent amount of political balance in Nevada. We'll see which way the trends go. It's probably trending a little bit to the right, but we got to see how much. How about New Hampshire? That's borderline C and B. I will put that in a low B. Yeah, the U.S. Senate, Democrats have both seats there. Obviously, Republicans have reelected their governor there several times. The House does tilt toward the Democrats, but Republicans do have a chance in one of the districts. Presidentially, it's been more on the left. I think all things considered, there's a reasonable amount of balance in the state, but you could make a case that it goes in C tier. I'm okay with that. But how about New Jersey? Well, New Jersey, that is going to go in the D tier. They had Chris Christie as governor. In the U.S. House, there is a lot of Republican vote there. It doesn't reflect in the number of seats. Republicans only have 3 of them. It's not as blue of a state as it seems, sort of similar to Illinois. Republicans do have a chance in some elections there, but usually the Democrats do come out on top. How about New Mexico? It's another interesting state, and it does definitely have a blue lean to it. They have had a Republican governor, twice elected. Republicans got screwed on that congressional map. It does seem like it is a little bit more blue-leaning, though. I'm going to put it in D tier. It's a high D, though, but there is some potential for Republicans to have some success there. New York, that's a good one. I'm going to put it in the F tier because statewide, Republicans, they did the best they could with Lee Zeldin, and they still lost it by enough points to where it wasn't super close. They're not going to do anything in the U.S. Senate there. The state legislature is pretty Democratic. Presidentially, of course, Republicans have no chance. So it's got to go in F tier considering all those factors. North Carolina, here's one. Competitive state. I put this in the B tier. Does have a Republican tilt, but Democrats, they have had their successes there. They do currently have Roy Cooper, the governor there, twice elected. So that is a state where both parties have had enough success to where it goes up in B tier. Next state, North Dakota. That's an easy red state, F tier. Ohio. The state has trended toward the right, as we all know. But Democrats, they do have Sherrod Brown, the senator there, 3 times elected. They got close 4 years ago in that governor's election. They picked up a couple House seats here. I know Republicans have drawn the maps to favor them, so that does make it look like Democrats have less representation than they should. It is borderline CD. Mike DeWine won in a landslide there. I'm going to put it in D, but you could put it in C, given Sherrod Brown. That's a possibility, but it's a tough call. That one's borderline. Oklahoma, very little success for the Democrats there. They did have 1 U.S. House seat in the last couple of cycles, but we're going to put that in F. Oregon, this is a tough call. Republicans have not been able to really get much going there. I put it in D. It's a fairly blue state, but not so much to where the Republicans don't at least come close in a lot of elections. Next state, Pennsylvania. Republicans do seem to keep coming up short here outside of their little bit of success they've had over the last decade. But I will put it in the B tier. The elections are close enough to where, even though the Democrats have won most of them, they can't feel good about those kinds of margins. And there's enough red vote there. It's trended away from the Democrats over the last decade. Republicans could win some races here, so we will put that in the B tier. Rhode Island, it's got to go in the F tier. Another one of those New England states where a couple decades ago Republicans were having some success, but nothing recently. South Carolina, that will go in the D tier. I think there's enough blue vote there, but it doesn't translate into much success. But I don't think it's quite as red as some of these states in the F tier. Next, South Dakota, that will be F. That is a very red state. Tennessee is also a very red state, and I'm going to put that in F as well. How about Texas? Well, Democrats haven't really won a statewide race here in a long time. They do have some House seats. They got a little close in that U.S. Senate election against Ted Cruz. But all that considered, I think it's going to be high D tier. It's probably trending toward the C tier. But after these midterms, Republicans did very well there. Utah, that is going to be F. It's not the absolute reddest state, but it's red enough to where it's not competitive at all. Vermont, I would like to put it in F, but I'm going to have to put it in D, just purely because they've reelected Phil Scott, and he is technically a Republican, so I can't put it in F, even though generally the lean of the state is pretty far to the left. Virginia, that state is going to go in the, I will put it in the low C tier. I think it still clearly favors the Democrats, but Republicans, with Glenn Youngkin in those statewide elections, they've had enough success there to where it's maybe reverted course a little bit, and I'll put it in C tier for now. Next, we've got Washington. This is a state where, again, Republicans have limited success, but they really seem to just don't have enough going. The state legislature isn't completely one-sided where Republicans have no representation, but this is borderline DF. I think, given the midterms, I got to put it in F until Republicans get a little closer and get some kind of success there. I'm going to put it in F. West Virginia, I would put that in F, but because of Joe Manchin, it has to go in the D tier. Democrats once dominated West Virginia, but not anymore. Wisconsin, that will go in the A tier. It's a fairly even state. They just reelected their Democratic governor and Republican U.S. senator. It's hard to get much more split than that. We'll see which way the trends go. But as far as even states, Wisconsin is one of the evenest states where both parties genuinely do have a chance to win whatever's at stake. Last state is Wyoming. Obviously, that will go in the F tier. And that's it. That's all 50 states. Most of them are in the D and the F tier, and I think that's just indicative of the political polarization. Not too many states are competitive. I think I'm satisfied with these tiers, though. Certainly you could see why A, B, and C are more competitive than the rest, and I get it. There's certain exceptions. You can make a case for a couple of these borderline states in some other tiers, but this is what I settled on. This was fun. Let me know in the comments. Do you mostly agree with this? Do you disagree on 3 or 4 of these states? Let me know down below. And if you enjoy this channel, on your way out, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Thank you for watching, and I will see you at the next video.